Folks, I've got bad news. The American century is over. I've said it before. This one's actually like a pretty big deal. RFK Jr. operating with what I can only assume is the greatest summary of information we have obtained thus far in vaccine research and virology, okay? Epidemiology, whatever you prefer. Kind of struggle with the intro there. Listen, we're cutting $500 million in funding for mRNA vaccines. When he was confirmed early in Trump's second term, when he was confirmed by the Senate inquiries into him, he said he would not ban vaccines. We all knew he was lying. Now we're getting what we got.
Other big news that's happening right now, the health department is pulling the plug on $500 million in funding specifically for mRNA vaccine development. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. calling the technology behind current COVID and RSV vaccines, quote, ineffective. Take a listen.
mRNA vaccines don't perform well against viruses that infect the upper respiratory tract. mRNA only codes for a small part of the viral proteins, usually a single antigen. One mutation and the vaccine becomes ineffective.
Scientists and vaccine experts are now coming out against this decision. They say mRNA...
Yeah, no shit. So this is genuinely like end time stuff, you know? You would hear about this in history books. This is like... Catholic Church develops new strategy against bubonic plague as the Black Death roils across Europe, rather than separating people into homes, gathering together to pray. Like that's the deal we're on right now, basically. When Hitler stopped researching Jewish sciences, I mean it is exactly the same thing. By the way, the fascist obsession with remodeling reality to suit their political needs. In a different reality, in a different timeline, where Donald Trump won in 2020, the right would not be anti-vaccine. Donald Trump was the one who implemented Operation Warp Speed to get the vaccines made quickly. Donald Trump would have, ineffectively, but he still would have been the one to administer them and spread them across the country. He would be hailing them to this day as a victory of science and of the Trump administration, and to an extent he'd be correct, though he would probably horrendously mishandle their distribution because he had no plans on how to distribute the vaccines once they were completed when the Biden administration took over. So, but we live in the bad timeline. Joe Biden won in 2020, so vaccines are now evil because they had to do something. They had to take advantage of the culture war talking point. No different at all to how Lysenkoism was promoted in the Soviet Union as a rejection of what they considered to be Western imperialist cultural influences, or how the Nazis rejected Jewish sciences like quantum physics, which they considered alongside golem making, because it was just a culture war talking point. That's what it was, by the way. Anti-Semitism was to the Nazis exactly what anti-transgenderism is, or whatever the else anti-vaccines is to the MAGA movement, obviously to different extents, but fundamentally they serve the exact same purpose. A thing to make you always angry, that you can get an updated list of talking points about day after day for reasons why you can ignore reality and hate X group. That's it. Simple as that. Could be anything. Helps when you take advantage of pre-existing biases. Anti-Semitism has existed in Europe for thousands of years, and there were already a lot of conspiratorial vaccine skeptic types, which, by the way, overwhelmingly would have shut the fuck up if Trump had won in 2020 and had continued to promote the vaccines. I'm telling you guys, if Trump had won, this wouldn't be an issue. Anyway, it's end of civilization stuff,
mRNA vaccines are a safe and effective way to fight against rapidly changing infections, and that cutting this research could put people at more risk during public health emergencies. NBC
thousands of years? Well, at least 1,000, right?
News health reporter Aria Bendix following all of this for us. So, Aria, RFK Jr. says there is more risk than benefits when it comes to these mRNA vaccines. But we've seen multiple studies, and we actually all lived through a pandemic where an mRNA vaccine actually was developed very quickly, in 1/10 of the time it takes for a normal vaccine to be developed. So is there evidence to back up the health secretary's claims?
Unfortunately, not really. What the secretary is essentially saying here is that mRNA technology doesn't offer sufficient protection against things like COVID and flu, and that these vaccines could be rendered ineffective by a single mutation. We just don't.
Bosh, mRNA vaccines are still developed, produced, and distributed by private corporations. Surely the health lobby isn't in support of this. Well, generally, when it comes to these big, like, transformational changes to the way our medical infrastructure operates, it's done through public funding. Private corporations are more than willing to make a profit off of, marketing something that the public has funded the creation of, right? mRNA vaccine technology, for the most part, was funded through public research. Private corporations then take that publicly available data that the government has paid for, and they go make their profits. But if you cut off funding to the source, you kind of lock us in place, right? They'll go to China, who will fund these advances in droves. Yeah, no, China, I think that China is going to end up outspending us on scientific investment in basically every single discipline next year with all the cuts that we've put into place.
See that, right? We know that these vaccines have been extremely effective against hospitalizations and deaths, preventing those, even if they don't prevent infections. And we know that these viruses have not mutated to the point where these vaccines are not working. They are indeed working. So the experts I talked to say that Kennedy just fundamentally is mischaracterizing the science here.
So the flexibility of the mRNA footprint is the point, right? And so what types of diseases would these vaccines typically be associated with, where the funding is being pulled? Do we have a sense of that?
Yeah, so these...
What about private investments in mRNA vaccines to make up for the loss of public funding? You're misunderstanding. Private investments go into the construction of specific vaccines. mRNA technology broadly is overwhelmingly funded publicly. Like, basically, like it's like you can only get private funding, basically, on making new vaccines with the existing tech, but it's only with the existing tech. If you want new tech, you need to develop research in projects that are not guaranteed to produce a return, and private corporations do not like that. They are risk averse.
Terminated contracts are really focused on mRNA technology for COVID and flu shots. Obviously, those are the viruses with some of the biggest pandemic potential. Also, the viruses that are responsible for the respiratory infections that we see every year. So this new research could have gone towards developing newer, better versions of these shots, maybe ones that don't involve needles or combine COVID and flu vaccines. That's really important when we think especially about the next pandemic. How can we use this research? One expert told me it's like cutting the entire fire department because there's no active fire. We know there will be, and you want to be prepared when it happens.
That's an interesting analogy. So, Aria, this is all happening amidst what appears to be an anti-vaccine push from Secretary Kennedy there. So he recently also gutted a pretty crucial advisory committee, a vaccine advisory committee at the CDC. Walk us through what happened there. Any
idea if the military-industrial complex will come to the rescue here? You mean Hegseth? No, probably not. I don't think Hegseth is going to divert Pentagon funding to mRNA research.
Right. So the experts I talked to are really worried about the secretary trying to whittle away at the U.S. vaccine infrastructure under the guise of safety. We've seen him pull $2 million from a vaccine program for vulnerable children. As you mentioned, the vaccine advisory committee to the CDC was gutted and then replaced. That group ultimately voted to pull certain flu shots from the market that contained a preservative that we know is safe. So all of this leads to long-term concerns about sowing doubt in the safety of our vaccines and maybe preventing scientists from even developing newer, better ones.
Are we going to see shortage?
If there's another pandemic during Trump's term, we're absolutely... Well, no, don't worry, guys. There's still some hope. If there's another big pandemic, we have to suffer, of course, obviously. But help will come in the form of vaccines produced by other countries. China, Germany, France, Norway, whatever. As time goes on, like as funding is diverted, all of the, immunologists, virologists, epidemiological scientists will be working in countries that actually value their contributions to the field, and we will have to pay for those vaccines. We'll have to pay a lot, and we will not be the first ones to get them either. We might not even want to buy them.
In flu vaccines?
Not at this point, no. These are hypothetical concerns, but very real and should be taken seriously.
The scariest thing you said is about the potential for the next pandemic.
Exactly.
The resources that we need. Thank you very much.
We thank you for watching, and remember...
The only thing that I can hope for is that as a consequence of this funding cut, all poor, stupid people who disagree with me die miserably from whatever the next pandemic will be, and I can fly to Spain or Canada or whatever else, and I'll be fine. Some of you presumably will be fine. F's in chat. Some? Listen, it's not fair. mRNA vaccines work by stimulating the immune system with a key protein from a virus. Kennedy says the federal government is instead investing in an alternative technology that uses whole-killed viruses and can produce natural immunity. While that technology has produced effective vaccines, it's a much older approach that can have safety issues and is not nearly as nimble in responding to new threats. So the old shit, yeah, this is how vaccines used to be produced. But it's not as useful when things are rapidly evolving. It doesn't do as good of a job at training your immune system to adapt to the specific kinds of threats and changes that a rapidly evolving disease might develop. And you can't use it for cancer? Yeah. You guys do know that we've actually been getting like relatively close to a cure for certain types of cancers, right? We have the basic underpinning technologies. We have the ability to rewrite the genetic code, CRISPR shit. We have the ability to train. I'm sorry, I'm out of my field of expertise here, obviously. But we have with CRISPR and mRNA technology, we have the building blocks of technology that could allow us to do really effective work against cancer that is, yeah, modular, right? Like, that's the thing. Because cancer actually refers to like a billion different specific diseases. The metastasization of skin cells is different chemically from the metastasization of your like liver cells. It's a whole different thing. So if you get the ability to approach it in a modular fashion, you can start to really fix things. But we're cutting funder for cancer research, you know? People don't appreciate how far cancer research has come because a lot of people haven't had cancer. In reality, if you get cancer today, you are much more likely to survive or to live longer now than you would have 20 years ago. Seriously, for a lot of different types of cancer, like, it has improved considerably. A lot of attention is given to HIV and AIDS for going from a guaranteed death sentence to now something you can live with indefinitely with the right medicine. But we're getting there with cancer. Some types of cancers, yeah. It's pretty grim. It's pretty goddamn grim.